Remember that 1 Corinthians is a corrective letter that Paul was writing. There were things wrong up at Corinth in the church. And we saw in the 5th chapter there was a man there that was doing wrong, and yet the church was glorifying themselves on how liberal they were, that they were so broad-minded that they could overlook a thing like that. They could water down the truth of God and compromise with it. But you know, brethren, God himself won't compromise with the truth. God could have compromised and said, well, now, why do I have to send my son down there to die and give my son to pay for the sins of people? I'm God. I've got power. I could just forgive the people without Christ having to pay their penalty for them. But, of course, to do that, God would have compromised with his own law and his own government. And he had set that law and that government, and he set it right, and he knew it was right. And God was not going to compromise 1/1,000,000th of an inch. Rather than that, he gave his only begotten Son to pay the penalty so that it would be absolutely paid in full. That's the only reason we can be here, because we've all incurred the penalty all right, but we don't have to pay it if we've repented. And I hope we all have, which means we've turned away from it. And we're not continuing that way any longer. We're not repeating what was wrong. That's why I won't compromise. Now, I've found that men have come to important positions in the church. They've been vice presidents. They should never have had that title. I'm sorry now. I repent that I ever gave them that title, so I'm not doing it anymore. Titles seem to go to men's heads. I don't know why. They do. And everybody wants to get into the chief seat of power. Now the women want to get there, and the ERA, they call it women's rights. There's no rights at all. Who made it right? God never did. But women want to. Now, if women will just do what God wanted them to do, that's where they will be much higher than they are trying to do what they want to do. I tell you, there's a wonderful glory waiting ahead for women just as great as God has reserved for men. If they're going to try to get it their own way and climb up some other way than by Christ and Christ's way, they'll never get there. They're like a thief and a robber, and they're not going to ever achieve what they're after. But Paul was correcting them for that. And Paul wouldn't compromise.